tail end of 2026, 2027, and stuff like that, I'm good on waiting to hear if those are coming to the Switch too. I want games that came out on the PS5 and the Xbox Series, and I want them to be brought over to the Switch too for one primary reason. It's not even necessarily about the game itself. It's about getting these engines on the system. It's about companies starting to understand how to develop things for the Nintendo Switch 2. It's about companies realizing limitations, what they can do to circumvent those limitations, utilizing things like DLSS, because third-party ports right now are the wild, wild west. You don't know if it's going to be a great port or a crappy port. Games that look like they're going to be crappy ports, like Star Wars Outlaws, somehow end up being the most impressive. And then games that should have been a surefire thing, such as NBA 2K26, is at 30 frames per second, yet WWE 2K25 is at 60 frames per second. Obviously, companies are needing more time to work on these systems. And if you're introducing some games that have come out a couple of years ago or something like that, that maybe won't sell extremely great, but they've never been on a Nintendo platform before, this allows you time to understand the system and figure out what you can do to get these games running better. And that's all I'm really concerned about, is more so the future. I understand that when a system comes out, especially a weird system like a Nintendo Switch 2, which is obviously not quite up there in terms of power as the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, companies are going to have a little bit of a learning curve to understand how to bring these ports and these games over to the system. But if we start getting that out of the way now, we can look forward to the future of third-party games having more parity. A game like NBA 2K26, it runs at 60 frames on the Series S. And you're going to tell me that it can't run at 60 frames on the Switch 2, even though Star Wars Outlaws runs better than the Series S version does, even though Street Fighter 6 looks better on the Switch 2 than the Series S does. This is obviously just ironing out kinks. And I think there's a ton of great games. You can even look at PS4 games and Xbox One games, like the Resident Evil remakes and stuff like that. Where the hell are those games? Like, that seemed like something that would be there at day one so that you can have the future of Resident Evil games on Nintendo platforms. I want a barrage of third-party games. I don't care if they're games that people love. I don't care if they're games that people hate. It's worth trying it out, though, just to get your feet wet, to figure out the technical aspects of the system and figure out how you can utilize this system to your capability. So that's what I want from a Nintendo Direct this week. I want a general Nintendo Direct that tells me about upcoming first-party games and has a litany of third-party games. And just, you know, oh, we solved the dev kit problem. Now everyone can announce that. Where's the Microsoft games? You know, it seems like there's companies that are just holding back stuff. And it's like, why are you holding this back? It's time to let it out there. The system is here. Now we have to keep momentum going if you're Nintendo. And what better way to do that than to show you, hey, not only can you play these awesome first-party Nintendo games that people buy the system for, but we've got all these third-party games as well. The choice is yours as a consumer. But let me know in the comments section down below. What are you hopeful for? What are you hoping to see in this Nintendo Direct presentation? If it even happens. I guess if it doesn't happen, then we're going to have a whole nother conversation about the leaks and stuff like that. But I'm pretty confident something is going to happen. So we just got to wait and see. When that announcement comes up, we'll talk about it again. And hopefully we're talking about a general Nintendo Direct because, oh boy, I might get a little bit spicy if we're not. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Hit the bell as well. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.
Today we have a Hall of Fame level scammer, Vegas Dave. Some of y'all may remember him. I've made a few different videos about him, but he's back. Just lost the judgment in court. He might be going bankrupt. In case y'all need a little refresher on him, we're going to go to the GOAT Steve Stevens to give us a little insight into who Vegas Dave is.
Because there's something going on with this clown, Vegas Dave, who claims to be a world-class sports consultant, who is an absolute fraud, robs people and bankrupts them puts him in the poorhouse, and knows absolutely nothing about sports. And it's time for me to expose you, you little 4'10", purse-wearing bitch who lives with your parents.
Which he does. But I will take it from here, Steve. We're going to be making a video about this man, Vegas Dave, today. So let's see how much money he makes.
To the critics, you know, so many people are writing online about me, and all the characters on the show are saying there's no way it's impossible to hit 75 or above % on games.
Yeah, that's actually true. What I've been told from someone is that what Dave would do is this system that he would make it appear like he's winning all these games, but really he'd just be doing martingale, which is where you double your bets. Not an effective strategy.
Let me ask you this. How in the world can I continually make $1 million a month?
$1 million a month. Some of you just don't quite understand how many degenerates are out there that are willing to pay for sports picks from a con man. $1 million a month, I actually believe him. And here's why. So in this video, it was, I think, Showtime or one of the HBO or something. They had a show that highlighted Vegas Dave. And so in this episode, you can see it on his channel, Vegas Dave was filming behind the scenes. So like, hey, the episode just went live. He wanted to show how much money was coming in, how many people were paying for his picks. So here's that clip.
Let me hit 200,000. 351,000, dude. 351,000, dude. Holy shit.
That's in one day, by the way. 350 grand. So when these guys say they make money, please understand that they are making money with the picks, not by actually betting, and it is a substantial amount of money. Now, where he invested that money is the subject of today's video. It was really funny driving around Vegas a few years ago because you'd see all these sports pick fraudsters with their billboards up, running hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in advertising to convince you, Mr. Tourist, to come to town and pay them for their sports pick because they had special knowledge. First lawsuit we're going to go through today is another one of the sports bettors, Bet with AJ. You may have heard of him. A few years ago, he was a little bit more relevant than he is today. Vegas Dave sued him back in 2018. One of the allegations is that Vegas Dave knew that AJ was a client of Dave's and had been for a duration of 3 years. And upon information and belief, defendant, Bet with AJ, is also engaged in the same business of providing online sports handicapping services to online users for a profit. Now, the profit part is not accurate. It was selling sports picks. But what was interesting about this case is that Vegas Dave alleged that he began to suspect that AJ was engaged in purchasing plaintiff's picks for the purpose of reselling them. So AJ was allegedly being a customer for Vegas Dave, was a part of his email scheme, I think was a member of his emails, and so he would receive the emails and then just send out the same picks to his audience. So upon information belief, after a 2-year investigation, I don't know why he didn't try and shut it down after a month or two, but Vegas Dave found out that AJ was purchasing plaintiff's handicap picks and then will immediately sell them to his own consumers. Dave then realized that AJ was actually even copying the emails and sending it out to his consumers. Dave also alleges that AJ was contacting Dave's clients directly with the intent of trying to convert them to being his customers. Dave came to the conclusion that AJ, using his account at Bet with AJ, was selling his products as his own. He was selling the picks as his own. Basically, hey, I've got all the expertise. I'm going to tell you how to win at sports betting. And he was just using Vegas Dave's picks, which in a weird way is kind of like scamming on scamming. Like you're taking someone else's picks, so you're stealing from someone who isn't a profitable sports bettor. Pretty funny. And so Vegas Dave ended up having a process for seeking a temporary restraining order against him, said no more. And since then, Bet with AJ isn't nearly as relevant as he was. Around that same time, Vegas Dave was making money selling picks. He started to invest in Cabo, Mexico. He invested in 3 different luxury rental vacation spots that are, have to admit, pretty nice. Well done, Dave. He did a really good job designing them and getting them up and running. Apparently, they make a lot of money, and they are very expensive. I don't know exactly what he paid, but I imagine collectively they're somewhere around $12 to $15 million. And based on the website, they seem to attract a very, very wealthy clientele. Dave hires Cabo Platinum. This is the major issue he has in Cabo, Mexico right now, is this company right here. Vegas Dave is claiming that they were defrauding him, but they've recently won a judgment against them. And so this looks like a property management company. They're probably pretty well established in the area. If you go through their website, it looks like they offer some premium services, yacht rentals, private jet rentals, and it looks like they have access, meaning they are the property managers of very luxurious properties, and they offer properties and an experience for wealthy clientele. In April 2024, Dave cut off the relationship with Cabo Platinum because a couple weeks later, in May 2024, he actually sued them and the two people running the company. Now, in the lawsuit, he claims that he first met them many years ago. In 2011, 2012, Dave was introduced to the defendants when he went on a trip to Los Cabos and met them, and I guess had a good enough experience such that a few years later in 2016, he purchased his first property via Vegas Dave. One big property with the ability to accommodate 22 guests. It's a luxury property. And around that same time, a property management agreement was executed. A big issue with this complaint, and what Vegas Dave seems to have an issue with the Cabo Platinum Company, is that there was a monthly earnings report that was supposed to be sent with him. This is basically every month he's going to receive the income, expenses, what needed to be fixed. And he was claiming that there was problems there. He wasn't receiving it every month. Now, it was a little bit confusing because why would you continue the relationship if you weren't receiving this monthly earnings report? But that's what he's claiming. Also, Vegas Dave, not exactly the most trustworthy source here. And then in 2018, he purchased 2 plots of land adjacent to Via Vegas Dave. One, to build a new home. This is when you get to Via Vegas Dave 2, another property that would serve a lot of guests. This Cabo Platinum Company also offered luxurious design, and so one of the first charges towards Vegas Dave for the second property totaled a little over $130,000 and a little bit of a fee for oversight. And then Vegas Dave received a proposal for furniture and fixtures for almost $1 million. Now, Vegas Dave claims that he did not approve the vast majority of the items contained in the proposal. Now, what's confusing is since then he's been running these properties and they've been generating revenue, so it doesn't seem like there was much of an issue, and he kept the relationship going until 2024. So I don't understand between 2020 and 2024 why there was clearly an issue on his part, why he's including it in this complaint. But then, for the 4 years following, why he kept the relationship going. Vegas Dave also claims that he paid the design fee for the second property and provided payments for carpentry and stonework, but he claims that the contractors that did the work have not been paid. Here, Vegas Dave claims that he has not received any of the invoices associated with the fees, services, and items listed on the monthly earnings statement. He claimed that, hey, you've never sent me any of the invoices. I don't know where my money's going. He also claims that in 2019, he hired the defendants to remodel the home that he purchased for his parents, located here in Spanish Hills area in Las Vegas. He claims that the budget had a maximum, his maximum renovation budget was $350,000, and I guess everyone signed. But the problem was that despite this maximum budget, the project took approximately 17 months to complete and cost over $1.3 million. Now, what I find confusing about this is that, so you have this budget, and then it keeps going on and on. It wasn't like they just took the credit card and just goes, oh, whoops, we spent $1.3 million. I don't know where the money went. You're sending them money throughout the whole process. He didn't just give them $1.3 million up front. He probably gave them a little bit, and as they completed work, you give them a little more. And so I don't know why this was now all of a sudden an issue. Why did he bring it up now? This is 5 years after the fact. He's going, well, wait a second, they spent way more on this remodel in Las Vegas, and now I'm just bringing up this issue. During the course of the remodel, the defendants did not send Dave copies of any additional proposals, invoices, or receipts for items that were purchased for the property. This doesn't make any sense. So this whole time we're led to believe that Vegas Dave was just in the dark. He just had his eyes closed, and they just took his credit card, and they just spent and spent and spent, and where are you spending the money? I don't even know. Doesn't make any sense. 4 years later, November 2023, with the help of one of the defendants, he bought the third Via Vegas Dave property, and somehow we're led to believe that he was having issues at his property, but he trusted them enough to buy another property in Cabo. None of this is adding up. The defendants were managing this third property, and they told Dave, hey, this property is making $100,000 per month in rent from guests, and I assure you that this is a good investment because we're managing it. We manage the property already. We know the prior owners. So based on this information, Vegas Dave bought the property, but he's claiming no inspection was completed prior to the sale, and numerous repairs were needed to ensure the property was rentable for guests, which is a little confusing because if it was already making $100,000 a month, then I'm assuming the property was plenty fine the way it was. But he's also saying that, oh, the defendants promised to make numerous repairs to the property after closing. That's on you, buyer. That's on you to hire an inspector and make sure that what you're buying is legitimate and doesn't need repairs, or at the very least, maybe you throw in when you buy, you say, hey, these are the little repairs that need to be completed before I purchase. That's on you, Dave. Once again, Dave says he's not received any of the invoices associated with the fees, service, and items listed, yet he kept sending them money. Since 2020, Plaintiff and Vegas Dave Consulting have wired at least $1.2 million. Please take note of the dates. These are substantial wire amounts, $120,000 all the way up to $514,000. So he was sending multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars all the way up to $1.2 million over these 3.5 years. Apparently, apparently this whole time he was having problems. He wasn't getting invoices. He wasn't getting monthly statements. He didn't know where the money was going. He was upset with the longevity of the renovations in his Las Vegas house, yet he kept sending significant amounts of money because he obviously trusted them. Something's not adding up here. April 2024 rolls around, and Via Vegas Dave 2 is still under construction. There were some valid safety concerns about the elevator. I think Vegas Dave was getting a little upset. He was wanting the property to be done. And so the defendant said, hey, we need to possibly move some guests to Via Vegas Dave 3 because we got them coming into town. And this part's really funny. So one of the defendants further stated that plaintiff's actions could ruin your business as well as ours. Already, after simply Googling your name, half the websites are about you being a scammer. This is truly sad. So Vegas Dave had to write this in his complaint, that they were realizing, once they started Googling Vegas Dave's name, they realized, oh man, our client's a scammer. And even better, this is the best part. So this paragraph, paragraph 70, defendants began contacting guests that booked reservations at plaintiff's properties. Basically, the property management company began contacting the guests saying, we're having issues. Vegas Dave is not allowing you to stay at the property. And so they advised the guests that plaintiff, Vegas Dave, is a scammer and would not honor their reservations. Defendant Danette also advised plaintiff that a reservation for a mutual guest in June does not feel her reservation is going to be honored by Vegas Dave after doing a Google search and will not be held at risk of standing in the street on her arrival day. So basically, the guests realized, like, they looked up the owner and realized, oh snap, this is Vegas Dave. They saw he was a scammer. Now, granted, in my kind of like understanding about this, he wasn't scamming with the house, but just to look him up and realize he was a scammer, they didn't want to stay at his properties. On the very next day, Cabo Platinum filed a lawsuit against Vegas Dave, Dave Wancha, in Clark County, Nevada. What they're mostly alleging here is that Vegas Dave stopped giving access to the properties. When he terminated the agreement, Cabo Platinum had received a lot of money from the guests. They had booked it, they received the money up front, and they had sent the money to Vegas Dave because he's the owner. And so now the guests are coming to town, and Vegas Dave cut off access to his properties. He didn't want to give them access anymore. So now the guests are coming into town. Cabo Platinum is on the hook for these guests having a good experience. And then when they come to town, they don't have access to a property. And so Cabo Platinum was saying that they had to then go find another property. Well, these are super unique experiences. It's not like a Comfort Inn where you can just send them to a local hotel and it's all kind of the same. No, these are very unique experiences. People are paying $3 grand, $5 grand, maybe 10 grand a night. This is a significant expense for people. And so Cabo Platinum is alleging that they had to pay out of pocket to make sure that these guests were taken care of because they didn't want their reputation to go to shit. Let's take a quick break from all that boring litigation and check out this image. Who is that lovely young lady and that man? That, my friends, is D Lucky. You may remember him from Instagram. He is an expert at slots. Apparently, people pay him every day to spend 15 minutes going and playing slots, hoping to hit jackpot. You probably noticed the thumbs up, and I love this guy's image down here. He's like, oh my God, how much is that guy paying for her? Well, if you recognize this lady right here, this is Holly. This actually was Vegas Dave's girlfriend for a minute. So you see Vegas Dave down here? That's because Vegas Dave and D Lucky were friends. But we have a little issue. D Lucky wanted to get in the sports betting space. He started selling picks as well. Now, of course, he is an absolute idiot. He knows nothing about winning sports betting. I even found it interesting at the bottom of the website. D Lucky is not a handicapper. These are his lucky plays of the day. So he's getting in the sports betting industry, right? Here's his picks. You can pay to lose money. Well, what did I just find? April 29th, 2025, Vegas Dave sued David Pham, Play Media LLC, and D Lucky Slots LLC. What is this lawsuit all about? Around 2021, Pham handled 90% of Vegas Dave's company expenses. These two, I think, had a really good relationship a few years ago. They look really friendly right there, don't they? So Vegas Dave was paying him for billboards and social media campaigns. Billboards alone allegedly cost around $200,000. Gives you an idea of what these guys are willing to pay, because when they're making multiples of that on the back end, they're easily able to justify $200,000 a month in billboards. And when you realize how many degenerates are out there willing to spend money on sports betting picks, 350 grand a day, makes total sense. But what's great is that defendants pocketed the $100,000 overage. He's alleging he was spending $200,000 and only $100,000 were going to the billboards. So somehow a scammer was scamming a scammer. Hilarious to me. Absolutely hilarious. Dave found out about some server issues, which forced him to transfer an additional $280,000. These servers were for the websites, but he believes it went directly into D Lucky's pockets. And there was an employee making 20 grand a month, this Roman guy, but he believes a portion of this money went directly into D Lucky's coffers. He also took an additional $10,000 per month for alleged web developing services. Dave kept asking for, who's this developer? Can I meet him? I'm paying 10 grand a month. He found out that all the money paid to them since 2019 was simply taken by the defendants. There was no web developer. In 2021 alone, it is estimated that $1.2 million or more was taken for business expenses that never actually existed. What a scheme! Vegas Dave was getting taken advantage of. $1.2 million. D Lucky Slots may be a new entrant into the Hall of Fame of scamming. Dave believes that $400,000 in funds that were supposed to be used for a social media campaign were stolen by D Lucky Slots. So he confronted D Lucky with the information, and he was then blocked and ceased all communication, began deleting all messages between the parties. But Dave kept the messages, which led to this lawsuit. The best part is that they had a business relationship for Metaverse Land, cryptocurrency-related digital real estate, for a total of around $210,000. But it sounds like D Lucky never handed it over. I don't know how you hand over digital land. But poor Vegas Dave, he contributed funds and reaped none of the benefits of the investment. Now, between me and you, I think it's down around 99%. So how much money has this cost Vegas Dave? He's alleging $10 million over the course of the business relationship. That's a lot of money, Dave. D Lucky, if you took $10 million, you deserve Scammer of the Year award.
You know what's not red? I'm gonna put my glasses on and tell you. NFTs, baby, up again.
Up again, baby. He was pitching NFTs at the absolute peak. So if you were buying at this time when he was promoting them, you're down 99%. He's so rich. I mean, think about this. When he bought NFTs, end of 2021 at the absolute peak, he said his $5 million investment is now worth over $200 million in less than 3 weeks. So a simple 40x. I mean, totally realistic, right? Buying virtual land. Here's another post from Vegas Dave about Sandbox in the metaverse. Only 100,000 buyers. Why aren't you getting in? Hilarious to see this now about his virtual portfolio and how much money he's lost since then. Vegas Dave was having a little tough time when he was the defendant in the case with Cabo Platinum. He was losing. The courts were working against him, as we'll go over in just a minute. So he decides to sue Cabo Platinum a second time, July 1st, 2025, essentially alleging the same stuff. I don't understand the strategy because he already filed one complaint. Why file a second one? However, he must have thought that maybe filing a second lawsuit with the same claims would lead to a better outcome. Then he went on social media trying to blast this company.
Issues with that company, right?
Yeah, Cabo Platinum, they were stealing from me. So, I trusted this company to manage my properties, and they were stealing from me. I thought they were stealing from me the last couple of years, but they've been stealing from me from day one since 2016. Like, all this could be settled last year. It could be settled tomorrow. They just provide the bank statements and the receipts, but they don't want to because it's pure fraud.
He's claiming since 2016. How in the world can you get scammed for 8 years? I don't understand it. He was doing business with them in many different areas, design and property management and running his properties. And what, you're telling me that over the many years of them running your properties, you just weren't getting paid, weren't seeing any of the invoices, weren't seeing any of the receipts? Then you just decide to file a lawsuit around the same time that they sued you and eventually won. Not really adding up.
Every month they would send me invoices, and I would say, "Where's the receipts? Where's the information?" And they'd be like, "Oh, I'll give it to you later," or "I'm sick." They would say they were sick with cancer, or they would make up excuses of why not to give it to me. But when that $3 million was taken, I had to tighten up the belt. I was like, "Hey, listen, I want everything you've been promising me. Our contract states receipts, financial documents monthly. I want everything by the state, or we're parting ways." They would never give it to me. Instead, they try to break in my house with a restraining order on them.
Jeez.
And then they try to flip it on me, saying like they're the victims and that they were my employees and I never paid them. Just scams, man.
Really fascinating. I read all the documents. I don't remember him seeing or showing any proof of $3 million going missing. That's kind of a random number. He seems to have had a little issue with them because he then went to the Gringo Gazette, which if you don't speak Spanish, understand that this means little purse man in English. And so he went a paid advertisement in the Gringo Gazette, $6 million fraud. I won't force you to read all this, but if you want to, he basically shares the story. Well, he was going publicly on podcasts, on his posts. I don't have them here, but if you go on his Instagram, you'll see there were some posts about Cabo Platinum being frauds and crooks and stealing money, paying, paid advertisement, paying to be in a newspaper. This is business disparagement. This is claiming that Cabo Platinum was scamming. This is tarnishing their reputation. So what will they do in retaliation? Well, my friends, this leads us to a judgment. Just a month ago, July 17th, 2025, the courts have rendered a judgment against Vegas Dave. And this, my friends, is the most fascinating reading of all. On May 14th, Cabo Platinum filed its first motion for preliminary injunction, basically saying, Dave, stop this. This is hurting our business. Our reputation's at stake. The court granted their motion, and they showed a few reservations here for each property that the court's basically said, Dave, you have to allow these guests. They've already paid. We've received the money. You've received the money. Apparently, they've seen in the court documents. They were able to show that Vegas Dave had received the booking money. You need to open up your property for these guests on these dates. Wancha never complied with the first injunction. What you'll find when reading this is that he didn't comply with anything. He's this little pest. He just wanted to, he's the victim everywhere. He's a victim on all the podcasts. He's a victim in the newspaper article that he paid for. But yet, somehow he never complied with any of the injunctions. Dave attempted to stay, dissolve, or clarify the first injunction, but never allowed access to his properties for the reservations this court ordered him to accommodate. The court said, dude, you have to let the guests come to stay at your property. And he was like, no, we'll try to litigate this. We'll try to stay the motion, or we need some clarification on what this means. So Cabo Platinum ultimately filed 2 motions for sanctions against Dave because he's not acting in good faith. The court issued a minute order granting both of those motions for sanctions, and they sanctioned him $5,000 for each motion. And they awarded fees and costs for those motions. Even better is a month later, after misappropriating Cabo Platinum's trade secret confidential homeowners list, Dave began using the list to email their homeowners, guests, and industry contacts a series of highly disparaging emails accusing them of fraud, embezzlement, failure to maintain proper financial records and accounting, theft, and a host of other serious and damaging accusations. Basically, he got a list of their clients and was sending them emails like, don't do business with these guys, they're fraudsters, they're scammers, probably very similar to what he was doing in the podcast, to a list he shouldn't have had access to. Cabo Platinum then immediately files a second motion for injunction. The court heard and granted both motions a month later. Then they had to file an amended complaint. Then a couple weeks later, the court entered an order finding Wancha had misappropriated Cabo Platinum's trade secret confidential homeowners list and told Dave, dude, stop possessing and using this information contained in the confidential list to contact their homeowners. Even worse is that his counsel agreed that Vegas Dave was not complying with the first injunction despite their advice. So then later that year, Wancha filed a notice of compliance saying that he had destroyed the misappropriated confidential homeowners list. Okay, guys, I've destroyed it. I was in the wrong. This notice of compliance was false because Dave subsequently violated the second injunction, sending more emails using their confidential homeowners list on December 25th and February 5th. This is now months later. He said, guys, I destroyed the list. No, he didn't. He kept sending emails to the list, which contained similar false and disparaging accusations against them and their principals. So in response, Cabo Platinum had to file a 4th motion for sanctions, again seeking a default judgment and a prove-up hearing to establish its damages. The court found Dave had violated the second injunction, just like the first one. They granted the 4th motion for sanctions and ruled that Cabo Platinum could establish its damages at a prove-up hearing. During this hearing in June of 2025, Cabo Platinum provided evidence through exhibits, admitted into evidence by the stipulation of the parties in the record, as well as the testimony of one of their principals and expert witness, James Olin. So what Cabo Platinum did, they hired what's called an expert witness. We've had to deal with this in my case. Basically, you go to a third party, an expert on the industry. They wanted to go to him because they needed an outside party to prove how much they were damaged. So in civil lawsuits, you have what are called damages. Oftentimes, they're not that clear. Sometimes if you lost your job because of someone defaming you or whatever, you can show a very clear loss of income. That's pretty easy to evaluate. However, with a business, how do you show someone didn't sign up for your booking? You wouldn't know their behavior. You wouldn't be able to track that. And so you want to hire an expert that can go into your business and look at the income and expenses and before the disparaging comments were made and after. And he can evaluate using his expertise, industry expertise. He can evaluate how much net income you can reasonably assume was from the disparaging comments. This expert, as you'll find throughout this complaint, or throughout the judgment, the expert found that there was actually a pretty clear indication of lost income after the disparaging comments were made, and a lot of enterprise value was lost, which we'll find out the amount in just a minute. The hearing included evidence supporting the claims in Cabo Platinum's first amended complaint and the monetary damages suffered by them. Also, regarding their rental contract claims, the court found that there was a rental contract, they adequately brokered the properties, they managed the properties well, and they sent money. They did everything according to the contract, and they didn't do anything wrong. Cabo Platinum also provided evidence that Dave contacted guests directly and told them to cancel their reservations with Cabo Platinum, demand a refund, and rent his properties directly from them. Airbnb deals with this as well. And so let's say you have a guest come and stay at your Airbnb, and you let them know, hey, at the end of their stay, next time you come to town, here's my email, here's my number, contact me directly, because these platforms and property management companies, they'll take a cut. I think this one was 20%. So if someone's spending $10,000 a night on a stay, well, if you go around the property management company, you're going to save a lot of money. Obviously, highly unethical, and according to the contract, would you be breaking the contract? Not cool, and that's what that's what they're alleging Vegas Dave was doing. Even worse is that Dave's conduct forced Cabo Platinum to refund money to several guests because Dave failed to return the funds that Cabo Platinum had paid him. Basically, what happened is these guests pay ahead of time. This is a substantial amount of money. These are big reservations, and so they would pay 50% up front, and then a few days or a week or however long before the guests arrived, they had to pay in full. The property management company, Cabo Platinum, would receive the money in full, and then they'd send that money to Dave after taking their cut. Well, the problem is that they sent the money to Dave, substantial amount of money, tens of thousands of dollars. Dave took the money, and then he didn't allow access for the guests. So the guests are coming to town, and then Cabo Platinum is going, well, wait a second, we don't have access to the property, and we don't have that money anymore. We already sent it to Dave. And so when the guests come to town, they're expecting they don't know who Dave is. They're expecting Cabo Platinum to give them and provide them the experience that they paid for. So now Cabo Platinum's on the hook. Their reputation's on the hook as well. They're established business in the area, clearly have a professional-looking website. So these guests are coming from out of the country. They're flying in, and so Cabo Platinum at last minute now has to rush to find a similar experience. Well, guess what they have to do? They have to pay for it because the guest has already sent the money. And so Dave has the money, Cabo Platinum's out the money. They're having to last minute book a similar experience for these guests. So they're out the money. That is damages. They were damaged tens of thousands of dollars and actually significantly more. And regarding Cabo Platinum's design contract claims, the evidence shows that Cabo Platinum had an agreement with Dave to provide goods and services for his properties, the interior design, assistance with remodeling and construction projects. At the time this dispute began, Dave, listen to this, Dave owed Cabo Platinum money for these goods and services not been paid. So Dave is going on podcast saying he's a victim. They stole so much money. In his lawsuits, he's alleging that he is the victim. But yet the evidence seems to show that Dave is the one owing the money for the services. Dave improperly acquired the confidential homeowners list without Cabo Platinum's permission. Vegas Dave, bad boy. He then used the list to disparage Cabo Platinum in communications. That's not good, Dave. And the courts agree that these were false allegations. On these posts and a campaign of emails reaching millions of followers that disrupted and harmed the business reputation of Cabo Platinum. And as I showed you in that newspaper post, he paid to publish multiple advertisements masquerading as articles in various news publications, including one publication specifically targeting the tourist market. You know that's damaging because I imagine that's where a lot of their customers come from. Olin, remember that expert witness, he testified that the damage Dave's actions caused Cabo Platinum was over $1.5 million in loss of net operating income and over $8 million in loss of enterprise value. Now, why the difference? Because $1.5 million is the loss of money today. But the business lost because that money goes into the value, that net operating income goes into the value of the business. Lost $8.3 million of enterprise value, what the business is actually worth. Cabo Platinum presented substantial evidence that Dave caused almost $800,000 in damages. He failed to identify a fundamental defect in their damages calculations. So the design contract. Dave failed to identify a fundamental defect in Cabo Platinum's damages calculations for the design contract. Here's the final judgment. Let's figure out how much Dave owes. Almost $10 million here, $800,000, $751,000, $61,000, and almost $20,000 in punitive damages. When you add it all up, for all you math nerds out there, who's got the calculator? That's right, over $30 million, $30.2 million judgment. No matter how bad you have it, you don't have it as bad as Via Vegas Dave. $30 million owed to Cabo Platinum.
That's why for this case, it's principle. There's no mercy. I don't want their money. I want them to go to jail.
Well, Dave, he claims in another podcast that he doesn't want to put up with that lawsuit anymore. He received the judgment because he didn't want to fight it anymore. But yeah, in this podcast, he's saying it's principle. I want them to go to jail. They scammed me. Well, the courts seem to disagree. Some of the statements were that Vegas Dave actually owes the money, and Cabo Platinum upheld their end of the contract.
All right, guys, what's up? In Okinawa, Japan, look at this view. Insane. But this vacation in Japan on a one-way ticket made me realize I can't hang it up. I cannot retire, people.
He can't retire, or maybe he's judgment dodging. Could he be leaving the country? Could he be going to Japan to dodge that judgment? But he can't retire. Dave is back with his sports betting picks. He needs the money, bros. $30 million will make you go really gray. Dave is a very, very sad and lonely man. Now he's got $30 million in judgment against his name. He needs to generate some money. But we'll end with this. We got Steve Stevens, one final statement. What do you got to say about Dave, Steve?
But when it comes down to sports consulting and winning games for people, you're bankrupting
Pokemon's
motherfuckers
30th
and
anniversary
ruining their
year
lives.
is going to be big. There's stuff we know about, stuff we don't know about, and stuff we kinda know about thanks to interpretations of alleged leaks. It's complicated, but today we're here to unpack it all. This year we've already had 2 Pokemon Presents. 2 presentations in 1 year is actually a return to the norm, with 2024 being the only year that ever gave us only 1 since they began. So 2024 was kind of a gap year by Pokemon's usual standards. But even though we returned to getting 2, after the recent July presentation, it's fair to say that there was still a large portion of the fanbase that was still underwhelmed. Despite a deep dive into Pokemon Champions and Legends EA, which is coming out in 2 months' time, something still felt kinda missing. So why is that? Are Pokemon saving all the big guns for 2026, or are we just getting our hopes up too much? In today's video, we're going to cover all bases when it comes to Pokemon games, exploring all the big things that Pokemon has in store for us, including some yet to be announced titles that will likely be revealed when 2026 comes around. Hit the subscribe button to help us on our way to 9,000 subscribers, and a big thank you to the channel members for powering another video. We've just uploaded our first TCG opening of 2025 for the members, so hit that join button if you want to see what we pulled from our Black Bolt and White Flare tins. But without further ado, let's get into it. In order to know what to expect from 2026, we have to look at the Pokemon brand's previous anniversary years. We're going to use 3 major previous anniversaries, the 10th, 20th, and the 25th, as benchmarks through this video. There were anniversaries like the 5th and 15th as well, but those didn't have the major unified brandings that we can also expect from the 30th anniversary next year. We'll use these references to compile our list of what to realistically expect, comparing it to those major previous anniversary years. The next question is, what do we already know is coming? Pokemon Champions so far is the only game we know is slated for 2026. At least that's all that's officially been announced. There have also been some unfortunate leaks in recent months that might have spelled out some other guaranteed releases, and one of those leaks tells us that Gen 10, also codenamed Gaia, will be announced. Unfortunately, we have to talk about leaks in some detail at this point, so I'll put a timestamp here in case you want to skip the leak chat. So according to the leak, Gen 10 is going to be an island hopping adventure that's largely based on seafaring exploration, Wind Waker style. That's a shame because it means IGN can only possibly give it a 7.8 out of 10 max, but it does also mean that we're likely going to experience yet another sunny environment with plenty of coast and nature to explore. I was personally hoping for Australia, China, Scandinavia, or even South America, the original location of Mew. But for some reason, Centro seemed pretty confident that this is a Greek archipelago location, meaning Gen 10 setting will be a cluster of Mediterranean islands. It's worth mentioning that the bulk of these leaks come through the Centro Leaks account, who have got some things right over the years, but plenty of things wrong as well, so take everything with a pinch of salt. I was personally holding on to hope that their leak information was bad, as they've definitely run with false information before, but when the recent Pokemon Presents revealed Mega Dragonite, and that aligned with the ZA leaked Mega information they had, I have to admit that my heart sank a little bit. That tells us that their information is probably accurate, at least for the most part. There's still a remote chance that they either got lucky, that their information is a combination of true and false leaks, or that their Gen 10 information is outdated to the point where the Pokemon Company have since pivoted from their leaked plan. But at this stage, that all seems very unlikely. So if Gen 10 is located in an archipelago, well, Pokemon are no strangers to island settings in the main series. The Alola region is comprised of several islands, and during the Kanto, Hoenn, and Galar games, we've traveled to offshore islands during DLC, post-game content, and special events as well. It is worth mentioning though that it's unclear whether the theory of this alleged Greek archipelago location is derived only from the codename Gaia. Gaia is of course a Greek word meaning the personification of Earth, so you can see how this connection can be made, but plenty of Pokemon's past codenames have been irrelevant to the eventual location of the games. Scarlet and Violet, for example, were codenamed Titan, another Greek originating word that did possibly refer to the Titan boss battles, but not the location location itself. But regardless of the location it will be based on, it's pretty safe to assume that Gen 10 will be announced during the 30th anniversary year. And if the leaks aren't convincing enough for you, you need only to look at the historical pattern of release windows. In 2026, it will have been 4 years since Scarlet and Violet were released. We can almost certainly rule out an announcement of Gen 10 in this calendar year, and we've never gone more than 4 years without a new generation of Pokemon. In fact, it's usually a 3-year gap between most gens. I don't think the company are brave enough to keep their new generation in development for 5 years, at least not yet, though hopefully that 4-year gap has allowed Gen 10 to have some more time in the oven at least, so it can be polished more than Scarvy was. I would certainly say that the last 4-year generational gap between Gens 4 and 5 allowed for a bit more finesse. So with Pokemon Champions and Gen 10 releasing in 2026, that means we'll have a new series Generation 10 game and a major spin-off game that's releasing on Switch systems and smartphones that will change the landscape of competitive Pokemon battling. That's already a pretty big deal for the 30th anniversary. But let's refer back to our previous anniversary years. Firstly, the 20th anniversary. The 20th anniversary took place in 2016, and during that year, Gen 7 was both revealed and then released, along with Pokemon Go. These were both huge deals, and I'd say are pretty directly comparable releases to Gen 10 and Champions. A brand new main generation and a major mobile game, albeit this time the mobile game is cross-platform with Switch systems as well. But there was one more major video game release in the 20th anniversary year, and as you can see, that was the Classics release on the Nintendo 3DS Virtual Console of Pokemon Red, Blue and Yellow, adding a third major video game installment to the anniversary year lineup that was more retrospective and legacy focused. Similarly, in the 25th anniversary, Pokemon had 3 major announcements. BDSP and Legends Arceus were the brand new back-to-back main series installments that were revealed. Pokemon Unite this time took the role of the major spin-off, but we also had some retrospective love here as well. Yes, inherently through Gen 4 getting its remake and its reimagining, but that was just because the anniversary happened to fall during a time where a remake was due as opposed to a new generation being due. But we also had new Pokemon Snap, a beautiful brand new remake of another old beloved nostalgic classic. The 10th anniversary can also be looked at here, but we must consider it was before the age of smartphones, and in 2006 the company were obviously much younger. But even so, this anniversary year also had 3 major releases. The original Japanese release of Diamond and Pearl happened, along with the release of 2 major spin-offs, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon and Pokemon Ranger. So if history is anything to go by, it's safe to say that we are almost certainly getting at least one more major release beyond Champions and Gen 10. And I think we have 2 options, of which we'll either get one or ideally both. Firstly, a brand new Classics release of the handheld generations 1 to 7 on Switch 2. And secondly, a remake or remaster of another nostalgic spin-off series. There are a few options that would be very well received, like Pokemon Ranger and Conquest, but the main remakes or reimaginings that could be amazingly successful would be Pokemon Colosseum and XD Gale of Darkness. We already are getting them at some unknown point on the Switch 2 Virtual Console, but imagine a version of those games with the treatment of a new Pokemon Snap or Mystery Dungeon DX, retaining everything that was so good about those original installments, but giving them to us in a brand new package with tons of new visuals and features. So Pokemon Colosseum and XD, for me, are the spin-offs that Pokemon are sitting on with the most potential. The games were successful in spite of them being on a console that kind of flopped relative to its generational competition, and that absolutely limited the sales potential. But that cyberpunk style would be amazing to see remastered or reimagined with modern Pokemon and the power of the Switch 2. Plus, it could re-energize the franchise with a more adult-themed series that could see even further sequels in the future. And the 30th anniversary would clearly also be the perfect time to announce another Classics release. From basically all perspectives, from an anniversary perspective, Pokemon always go hardcore on nostalgia, and it would be the perfect way to celebrate the history of the franchise. From a marketing perspective, it makes sense because the news and trailers engaged new and old fans alike online. From a commercial perspective for Nintendo, it makes sense because we'll still be in the early days of the Switch 2 era, meaning any exciting releases will have the potential to sell consoles. And the ability to play classic Pokemon is bound to push many people over the line if Gen 10 wasn't enough for them. It makes sense from a fan service point of view, from a timing point of view, and of course from a monetary point of view it makes a lot of sense because it will single-handedly sell subscriptions for Switch Online. Or if it's some sort of bespoke remake Remake or HD Collection type bundle, its sales potential will be even greater, especially when you think about the Red, Blue and Yellow releases on 3DS adding another 1.5 million sales to a generation of games that already sold 45 million originally, let alone the GBA remakes. But exactly what would this classic service look like? Which games would be selected and how would they arrive? Well, I personally love it when we see a hybrid of new and old. A blend of old art styles with new technology, for example, like Octopath Traveler 2. The HD 2D style would be perfect, for example, for a black and white remake. But I think that might still be a few years down the line yet, perhaps during the Gen 10 remake cycle in late 2027. Instead, I think the decision is really how they port the games, how many generations they include in the Classics release, and how they're packaged. On the 3DS, we also got Gold, Silver and Crystal a year after Red, Blue and Yellow released. So, in total, Gen 1 and 2 were playable, but not their remakes Fire Red and Leaf Green or Heart Gold and Soul Silver. But this time, I think they'll go even harder. I haven't ruled out the possibility of an actual Pokemon main series app on the Switch 2 where you can pay to play any individual main series title from the handheld days, from originals to remakes. However, I think we might have to be realistic about what's going to be the best commercial package that both makes the company money, but also doesn't extort fans. That's the balance they will want to strike. To be honest, straight up putting the games on the respective console apps on Switch 2 is definitely an option, but there is one major issue with that. As far as we know, putting the games on the Virtual Console apps wouldn't allow connectivity with home, and a lot of trainers will want the ability to move their Pokemon into the modern titles like Scarvy or Gen 10. Also, there isn't a DS or 3DS app yet, so you could only do generations 1 to 3. However, the Switch 2 definitely allows for a DS and 3DS app in the future, especially with its mouse functionality. So if they did just straight up port the games into the Virtual Console, I think Gens 1 to 3 would be the package they go with. And this would hopefully include third versions like Yellow, Crystal and Emerald, plus the Gen 1 remakes Fire Red and Leaf Green. But I think the best commercial option for the company and fans alike would be selling a new Classics Collection game that includes various titles and effectively starts a new sub-series. This means you could first start with a game that covers Gens 1, 2 and 3, and then do a Gens 4 and 5 version in the future, followed by a Gens 6 and 7 version. That way, each installment would feature several original games plus one remake. Doing it this way would open the door for multiple revenue opportunities across multiple years, while still giving us amazing fan service. And commercially, this would not only far outweigh any money they would make from Nintendo Online subscriptions through just dumping the games on the Virtual Console, but also could enable challenge modes, visual sliders like the ones we see in Final Fantasy Tactics, Wi-Fi functionality, and potentially even randomizer functionality if the company are brave enough. It basically puts the control in the Pokemon company's hands, rather than funneling it through a Nintendo Virtual Console app, and it gives a far better experience to fans through more features, home compatibility, and quality of life updates. So there we go. Those are the 4 games I'm expecting to be announced and released during the 30th anniversary next year. But what do you think? Are there any games, sequels, remakes, or new concepts that you expect to see during the 30th anniversary year? Let me know all of your thoughts down below, and until next time, love you, gang.
I'm losing weight to play Pat Bed, but whoever. Man, you know, I feel like I just want to see where my body at. Like, if I could get down to 210 or 215 and just see, can I stretch it right?
So I think that's what you gotta do. Three right team. It's not a lot of people that go 3 dribbles.
That nigga got me. Shit. I'm starving down here. Nigga's level 7 already? Shit. He's level 7 before the 2-minute mark. Nah, I gotta go up top. They starving me. There's no point. I can't get nothing. Yo, they running through us, bruh. They got 9 kills already. One of the goals is broke. The nigga was at level 7 before 2 minutes was up. Like, this is crazy. I just hit level 5. Now we gotta fight together on this one. We definitely gotta be clicked up. Kill that bitch. Niggas ain't let me score the 30, okay. There we go, now we doing some shit, now we moving. Fuck out of here. Got revived to get dropped. Boy, y'all almost caught it. Fuck out of here. That's blouses. The whole team is dead. We just fumbled that. Good. Spencer scribbled on the wall. Perfect. Perfect. Yo, the match is over.
When phone companies were racing to make a fully bezel-less phone, Samsung released something no one expected. In 2019, Chinese companies were flexing their bezel-less phones. Xiaomi had the Mix Alpha with a screen that covers the whole phone. Oppo had the Find X, a phone with a pop-up camera, and Vivo had a phone with an under-display camera. Samsung had to act fast before Chinese companies took over the whole smartphone market, and what they did next left everyone in shock. Samsung released the Galaxy A80, their first phone with a true bezel-less design. It didn't even have a selfie camera because it had a flip-up camera that rotated whenever the user needed to take a selfie. But it had one major issue. Since the flip-up camera was mechanical, it was just a matter of time before it's broken. When phone companies were racing to make a fully bezel-less phone, Samsung released something no one expected. In 2019, Chinese companies were flexing their bezel-less phones. Xiaomi had the Mix Alpha with a screen that covers the whole phone. Oppo had the Find X, a phone with a pop-up camera, and Vivo had a phone with an under-display camera. Samsung had to act fast before Chinese companies took over the whole smartphone market, and what they did next.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Shankweiler's Drive-In Theater. Our snack bar is open, and we've got our full menu tonight: burgers, hot dogs, fries, funnel cakes, and of course, the best popcorn in the Lehigh Valley. Please double, triple, and quadruple check that all of your headlights and running lights are turned off. Without further ado, on with the show.
Shankweiler's was listed for sale off and on for 6 to 7 years.
We were all just very nervous that it was going to get leveled and made into apartments or a warehouse.
I had the qualifications, we had the background, we had the blueprints to redefine the business, so who else was going to do it but us? I'm Matthew McClanahan, and I'm 35 years old.
I'm Lauren McChesney, and I'm 41 years old.
And we're the owners of Shankweiler's Drive-In Theater in Northfield, Pennsylvania. Shankweiler's is a first-run theater. That means we predominantly play brand new movies.
We do a double feature every night.
So in the summer months, we skew to family-friendly programming, a lot of PG and PG-13 movies that bring in large family crowds from both the area and beyond. And in the winter months, as it gets colder and schools open back up, we skew our programming to a more adult audience.
So we have a little something for everybody.
Some of our expenses are our utilities and power. That's a huge one, especially given the size of our projection equipment and all of our kitchen equipment drawing a lot of current. Film licensing is the number one. That's really where we spend most of our money. A little bit over 50% of what we earn on ticket revenue goes right back to the studio, and that's the average.
It's about a third of our entire operating expense. Writing a $50,000 payment to a movie studio is still...
It's still a little gut-wrenching. In the summer months, we have a larger crew operating the snack bar, and that adds up. Food cost of goods sold, that fluctuates pretty wildly depending on how popular a movie is, the time of year. With studio payments, it's dependent on how many tickets we sell. So if the studio payment is high, it's because we've earned a lot of money. The mortgage does not change, does not care if you sold tickets or not. I have a background in film and filmmaking, and Shankweiler specifically was my childhood theater growing up. So for me, this is kind of a personal full circle experience. Lauren and I wanted to build our own drive-in. We were hitting a lot of roadblocks with that, but we were learning a lot on the way.
I was still working in healthcare at that point. I was working in marketing for a hospice, and I was very tired of that. So I started going with Matt when he did his mobile shows.
There was a local news article which basically said the owners are looking to sell. They're hoping to keep it a drive-in, but they're entertaining all offers because they were ready to retire.
It was kind of one of those things where we never thought we would be able to afford it. So we would just be like, oh, I hope someone buys it someday.
It was in February that I finally met the owners and the realtor and toured the property. I came home and talked to Lauren, and we just said, okay,
we'll figure it out.
Let's do it.
We scrounged up as much money as we possibly could from every resource.
We were actually very fortunate because the sellers were willing to seller finance a portion of that loan. Since we were able to privately finance out $50,000, that took the SBA loan down to that $1 million flat.
We closed on the drive-in on November 4th, 2022, and we reopened it for business on November 11th, 2022. It's not common for drive-ins to be open year-round on the East Coast, but it's not unheard of.
We're still taking a loss in wintertime operations, but it's less so if you have some revenue coming in versus no revenue at all.
2 weeks after we bought the drive-in, the projector failed spectacularly, and we had to shut down.
We didn't have a tech, we couldn't afford a tech, so I had to learn how to repair it myself.
We didn't have any working capital, we had barely any experience. We had momentum going into it and immediately started to lose that momentum because people thought we were closed for the season. So we had a lot of challenges right off the bat. First year we didn't really pay ourselves.
We paid just enough to put groceries on the table. It wasn't until year 2 that we were able to regularly set money aside each month and pay ourselves a more reliable salary. Shankweiler's is really only profitable, I would say, about 4 months out of the year, and it makes the majority of its revenue within June, July, and August, with July being usually the most profitable month of the year. And that is what carries the theater for the entire rest of the year.
We have certain times of the year, though, that really depend on the movie. Wicked last year, when it came out in November, we had a huge crowd come. So that's a month that normally isn't exceptionally profitable, but became profitable because there was a good movie that people wanted to see.
Obviously, there's a certain level of nostalgic charm. With the 50s snack bar or a classic CinemaScope screen, that is part of the magic of the drive-in experience, and you don't want to modernize that too much, otherwise it loses a bit of that soul that it has.
Matt and I are still very hands-on. We actually get that comment a lot from customers who come, and they're like, oh, I thought you were the owners. I didn't realize you actually did things. We have always been doing everything.
I typically arrive at the theater around 2 o'clock. That's when I take inventory and assess what we need to restock. I'll spot clean whatever I think is out of order, and then I'll clean the bathrooms, and then Lauren and I walk the field, get that spruced up. Around then is when crew starts rolling in and opening up the snack bar. At that time, it's around 6:30, and then at 7 o'clock, we'll open the gates. And we're also enhancing going to the movies. And we do that by installing little photo ops that we build, extra decorations. We'll bring in a lot of outside food and drink vendors.
I thought it was going to feel a lot scarier to give up my previous career, but instead I feel like I connect with this a little bit more. When I worked in healthcare, I was there every single day because hospitals don't close. In this position, I can make time to go get coffee with a friend, or I can clear out my schedule for a whole day and just decide this is my recovery day, I'm not going to do anything.
It's a high-stress, high-reward operation. I question it constantly. But when the movies are playing and you're watching hundreds of people share this amazing experience and they're having a great time and everyone's happy, it's like that weight is just lifted and you realize this is why we're doing it. Because the community is coming together in this space and we're facilitating something really special.
In today's video, I will teach you how to get an SBA loan. So we're going to be covering what are SBA loans, What are the pros and cons of SBA loans? The SBA loan eligibility requirements. I'm going to give you some advice on SBA loans as well. And where do you get an SBA loan? Okay, so let's start with this. What is an SBA loan? Okay, so here's what you need to know. The SBA is the Small Business Administration, which is a government agency that focuses on helping small businesses. So it's very important to understand that the SBA does not lend money. So here's how it works. Okay, so let's just say that you try to get a business loan from Chase Bank, okay? Now, why would Chase Bank reject your loan request? Well, essentially, they will reject you if they believe that you won't pay them back. Because if Chase Bank lends you money and you don't pay them back, then Chase Bank loses money on you, right? So here's where the SBA comes in. The SBA will give Chase Bank a guarantee. So for example, if Chase Bank gives you a small business loan of, let's just say, $100,000, the SBA will give an $85,000 guarantee to Chase Bank. So this is, of course, great for Chase Bank because it protects them from major losses if you can't pay back your loan. So if Chase Bank gets a guarantee from the government, from the SBA, then it's less risky for Chase Bank to lend you money. So therefore, Chase will be more willing to lend money to small businesses. So the SBA will guarantee a percentage of the loan up to 85%, but honestly, it really doesn't matter to you because that's between the SBA and the lender. But what's important to understand is that the SBA does not give an SBA loan. The SBA simply gives a guarantee to the lender. Now, I want to show you the most common types of SBA loans. They're going to be the SBA 7A loan, the SBA 504 loan, and the SBA micro loan. Okay, so the SBA 7A loan is the most popular option. So this money can be used for a variety of purposes: daily operations, buying equipment, startup expenses, acquisition, etc. So SBA 7A loans are up to $5 million. So that's as of today. So that number may change in the future. But the average SBA 7A loan size is $443,097. The repayment terms, 5 to 10 years. There are some exceptions for, for example, for real estate, which could be 25 years. So the interest rate can be fixed or variable. So if it's a fixed rate, then the interest rate doesn't change for the life of the loan. If it's a variable rate, then the interest rate will be pegged to a benchmark such as the prime rate plus an additional margin. Okay, now let's cover SBA 504 loans. So these loans are used to purchase real estate or big equipment. So the maximum funding amount can be greater than $5 million. It depends on the purpose of the loan. So the average SBA 504 loan size is $1.1 million.